Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
Hi Lynn, so good to be back with you on the podcast. I know for our last episode you were solo piloting. How did that go?
Oh, I missed you, Rachel. It felt really strange, and I don't think I was as polished without my pod buddy. So it's really nice to have you back this week.
Oh, thank you. Well, yes, this week it's just the two of us. We don't have a guest, and we're tackling something that scares the pants off many freelancers, and that is when to end things with a client and why you'd want to do it and how to do it, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, it's a great topic. And I think you were inspired on this particular topic by James Clear newsletter.
I was, yeah. And for those that don't know James Clear, he wrote Atomic Habits, and he's just the most interesting guy. I just listened to his 2-part podcast with Brené Brown on the Dare to Lead podcast.
I've listened to that too, and it's awesome, isn't it?
It's so awesome. I was in the car coming back from the weekend. I had like a long drive both ways, and I just, it was so great. There were light bulbs going off for me, that whole thing. But I digress. This was actually something I read in his weekly newsletter, and sometimes he does this. He like poses a question to his readers, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I get his newsletter every week, and I quite like it on a Friday morning. It's quite interesting.
It's really interesting. And this one, I think he wrote, write down all the projects you're working on right now. What is the one thing that if you had the courage to eliminate it entirely would make all the others easier? And it got us thinking, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah, we all do this. We all hang on to difficult projects or difficult clients, and we perhaps dream of letting things go that make our lives harder or more of a grind, but we find it really hard to do that. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really scary giving up a regular client or a project that's a regular source of income for you. And of course, on the flip side, there are many reasons why you want to. And for me, it's sometimes when like the scope of work has changed a lot. So it's not something I can do easily or quickly. So like, for example, I had a client who was lovely, but he kept wanting more and more social media analytics and a lot more skill. And it's not really my thing, Rach. So I felt there were two options. One is to really upskill with what he needed to get where he needed me to be, or to pass him on to someone who was more of an expert than me. And I just chose to take the second option. And I felt so much better after that too.
Yeah, because often if it's a skills-based thing, you think the time involved with doing that, is it going to help me with other clients? Do I really need that skill on my skill set? I've been there as well. Sometimes it is easier just to outsource that or give it away completely. So I know how you feel.
Exactly. Unless it's somewhere where you want to go in your career or in your business. Sometimes you got to give it to somebody who's really into that subject.
Like podcast recording, like
editing. Podcast recording. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh, to our podcast editor. We don't actually do it ourselves. My husband Phil used to do a bit of podcast editing before he got too busy for us, but just being able to not learn that and pass it on to someone else was a unanimous decision.
It was, and such a relief. Such a relief.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there's also a change on the client side. I mean, we've all had this when an editor or a marketing manager or content person has left, and the new person is just different, maybe in the style of work they want. Maybe sometimes it's about how much they want to pay, and they don't appreciate your work, or you feel like you have to prove yourself over again, which is really tiring. And sometimes I think it's also about rates, like older clients may not be paying as much as new ones, and they don't want to meet your new pricing.
I think it can often come down to a gut feel. Like if seeing a client pop up on your phone or in your email gives you kind of that pit of dread in your stomach.
Oh my God,
that's not good. That is not good. And often I think I would be so much happier if I didn't have this client on my roster, or if I didn't have this client on my roster, would doors open to better things? And I think that is a really powerful question to ask yourself and to sit with if you're not quite ready to do it, but just sit with that. Could this Just give
Yes,
me a space for something better.
exactly. I had a client. I always had a feeling about this particular client. And then she started to ring in the evenings at the end of the day, questioning work I completed and things that she signed off. And because her son was starting to give her advice on SEO and she wanted to redo everything.
Oh, God.
And when I was sitting down, you know, with a glass of wine or whatever, and just seeing her name pop up, and it just did give me that pit of dread as you're talking about. And I just decided I didn't need to have that sort of stress in my life. I just ended up sending her an email, and it just said that I felt I couldn't help her anymore. And if she needed experts SEO analysis, she should get an expert or get her son to do it. And oh my God, it was such a relief when I sent that email.
Absolutely. Look, there are just so many reasons that you'd let go of a client that makes you miserable, or a project that, you know, that you can't stand. And I think, you know, gosh, where do we start? It could be that the client is really demanding and they don't respect your boundaries as a freelancer.
Oh, yes. That's a bit like my late night calls. Yeah.
Yeah, they treat you like a member of their staff. We did a whole blog post about that.
We did.
Yeah. Or I think they throw a lot of work at you, and you mentioned it comes down to rates. This is such a big one. They throw so much work at you, but they don't pay very well. So you're constantly stuck working on their projects and not making very much money, but knowing you could make more money. That is exactly really a huge one.
Sometimes it might have been that they were a good fit for you at one stage, like as we're talking about when you've upskilled or something. Yeah, and they've gone in a different direction, or you have, and you no longer want to do that sort of work, or they want you to do something that you don't do anymore. Have you ever said goodbye to a client like that?
Sort of. I mean, I have a folder in my email called old clients or not in service.
Oh, nice.
I don't want to delete them completely out of my email, but it's where I move clients I'm not currently working with. And I did revisit that folder while I was working on this episode, because I just wanted to see who were some of those clients that I'd stopped working with and why. And very often, because obviously we both started in magazines as magazine journalists, it was because the mag had closed or the editor moved on and they could no longer commission me. And even though I might have tried to reconnect with that editor, they might have brought their writers on board and left the old ones out in the cold, which happens a lot, us poor writers out in the cold. So that's happened to me a few times. There was also a couple of small business clients that I let go, or we, you know, mutually agreed to part ways. One was a parenting client who felt I'd become too expensive when I raised my rates. So I had to really stick by that and say goodbye to her. But that was sad because I really liked writing for her. And I also had an interiors client, a small business client who I really loved working with. And I spent hours of time, when I think back, helping her with ideas, thinking it was going to translate into more than she'd paid me, and it didn't. We went our separate ways. And I think, you know, this is a whole separate episode, but it's really why a lot of freelancers decide not to work with small businesses, because they can be unpredictable and they don't have budget. But saying that, I have some small business clients who are willing to invest and have a lot of budget. So, you know,
it just depends, doesn't it?
Sides to that one.
Sometimes a small business that's a bit more mature, you know, they've been going for a while, that makes a difference, I think.
Yeah.
I did have a client I worked with for years doing a weekly newsletter. It was a small gig, but it was lovely. And she was lovely and the work was easy.
I remember her. Was she a cake person?
She was, yeah. But as her business grew, she ended up getting in some marketing consultants, a whole bigger team. And the briefs just started to get a bit confusing and conflicting. The marketing people wanted their own writers. And I just felt it wasn't working for me anymore. And, you know, we went on. But I love her. I still buy her cakes.
Yeah, I know. It's really hard, isn't it? I think another thing that we haven't really mentioned is when it is, or it becomes, really boring.
Yes.
I stopped working with one because I didn't love the subject matter. And also the client was really ad hoc in his briefs, and he would disappear for long periods, just go missing in action. And I think as a freelancer, how the client acts is just as important to me as landing the work, because it can make your life so much easier if they're really engaged in the process, I guess.
Exactly. Actually, this is probably, I think I've mentioned it before about my Peter allowance, the pain in the ass allowance.
So we've done a whole episode on that, haven't we? Did we?
Yes.
Maybe we should.
I don't know, maybe we should. But it's when somebody is difficult to work with. Yep. And I usually charge 20 or 30% more. And that means, and sometimes they're difficult, not because they're horrible people, but because their processes are difficult. Sometimes it's because like there's a whole legal department that has to look at it and everything takes longer or more stakeholders. So basically that 30% or 20% covers all that extra angst. And then I don't tend to get quite as resentful because I basically allowed for it. Yeah.
So true. Well, look, we did ask the Rachel's List Gold Group members about when they said goodbye to a client, and we got quite a few interesting replies. I even got replies via phone and email. So
so did I.
Yeah. So one email I received about this that really resonated with me was a freelancer told me that she was doing this once great medical job and she loved doing it, like a medical writing job, but it just became too time consuming because there were too many steps and back and forths and too many approvals. So in the end, it just made sense to let it go, even though she was losing money doing that. But she said in the end, it just made more sense to let it go. But I think that's just one scenario. We had so many different ones, didn't we?
We did. Like Rashida, who said that she let go of a horrible client who didn't know anything about copy. And I think that's sort of a client that's not educated about it, started undermining her confidence to a point where she hated talking to him on the phone. And that's back to what we said before. He didn't fill out her brief, wouldn't provide feedback, and anything he did give out contradicted what he'd said on his emails earlier. He was always too busy. And she said she had a firm chat with him, realized he had no clue, and she refunded him the deposit, less time spent in meetings, and instantly felt a huge sense of relief.
Wow.
And then she said that after that, she found a dream client and she decided to niche in something, and she swore never to take on any builders or developers or tradies again, which is funny because they're my core client.
That's your core client.
Problem.
She could have handed him over to you.
She could have. But maybe there's nightmare clients in every industry.
That's right.
And she said it took 3 months of her life and so much stress, but it led her to her niche and she loves it and she thrives. So, and she got the last word by putting in an email exactly why she was terminating the agreement and copied in all the staff. Wow.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
Nice one. Having the last word. I like it. We had a comment from Lexi who said that she had, dumped clients a couple of times. And she wrote, "The grief is not worth it. I'm a big believer in closing one door firmly to open another better one," which is what we were saying earlier. And I think that's just so true.
I honestly believe that. I mean, even though it's terrifying to do it, particularly when you're working for yourself and to sit there and wait for that new client to come along.
I know, but they always do come along.
Yeah.
And I think you can just spend that quiet time, which you never have, doing your marketing, fixing up your websites, sending letters of introduction and just doing those things you never have time to do. Maybe go to the movies. I don't know.
Whoa, the movies. Yeah, I do relish those quiet times. And I find it helps you to do better marketing and find better clients because you start to think about who you really want. You learn from all those mistakes. Shona also had a great story. And she was writing blogs and doing social media for an educational facility. And they weren't really online savvy at all, she said. They weren't paying her much. They were expecting a great deal. And they wanted her to train them into how to take images for the web and visiting their offices twice a month, which was a 4-hour round trip for her. Oh my God.
Red flag.
And then finally, she said, the final straw was when the general manager sent her stepdaughter over to Shona's house on a Saturday, oh my Lord, under the guise of teaching her how to write SEO and creating social media content. Shona said that all this girl was doing was checking on her to see if she was actually working hard for them. And then Shona said she just handed in her resignation straight after. Oh my goodness. Checking on you.
Who goes on a Saturday? I mean, who does that on a Saturday as well? That is just bizarre, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we've got one more, I think, from Claire, who had a really interesting perspective on letting go of clients. I'm going to read out her comment. "I've let go of a few clients, mainly because when I was first starting out, I didn't have the experience of working with small businesses. I was finding my way and they were finding their way. And when I became clearer on my messaging, I found working with those clients, things weren't that reciprocal. So one client wouldn't give me assets or a proper brief, and he'd just drag things out, and I was kind of expected to read his mind, and it just got too hard. They also wanted to continue working with me, but it wasn't filling my cup, and I felt like I wasn't really achieving stuff for them or helping them meet their goals because they didn't have any concrete goals, which is so true. And also they didn't have the budget to go to the next level, so it became really frustrating. And although they were lovely, it just wasn't the right fit for me. And when you let go of clients like that, you become more clear on who you want to work with, and you start to attract those clients. It really is like magic. I now have 2 clients who are really clear about what they want and are willing to spend the money to reach their goals, which is so much more satisfying for me. Isn't that great?
It is. And it's exactly what happens. I think when you give up clients and find new ones, you sort of know those red flags. And it's not necessarily these clients are going to be difficult, but they just might not be right for you. And I think that's it.
Wasn't Emma McMillan talking about that too? That sort of when you get your messaging right and you nail your messaging, it really does open the door to attracting clients. And it is like magic, as Claire says. It's like suddenly you've got these people coming to you who really dovetail with what you do and are looking for someone who does what you do. And so it becomes a lot easier.
Yes, I think that's a bit talking about like the niche, like Rashida talking about her niche, and that's certainly what's happened. I've done more and more into that niche. We had a whole episode on finding your niche, and mine being sort of all the interiors and building things. And I keep getting people, and every time I know exactly what they want, I think, yep, I can do this. It's in my comfort zone and it's good, and I can stretch myself from there. But it's always a better client, and they usually, you get similar level of clients with a similar sort of level of budget too. I think that works too.
That's definitely the benefit of having a niche, isn't it? But for someone who's more of a generalist like me, or who has multiple niches, it can be a little bit trickier with your messaging, but I do think there's something in it. So if you guys haven't heard Emma McMillan's episode, which I think was 2 episodes back.
Yep, 2 episodes.
That is a really interesting one. It will really make you think about your messaging and what you're actually attracting onto your website.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think getting back to the topic at hand, the overall message from this episode is not to be scared of dropping clients or dropping projects that are making you miserable or messing with your income goals or that don't fit in with your business goals anymore. And if I can be really cheeky for a minute, I just want to remind Gold members who are listening that you can always offload those clients in the Gold group and find great freelancers to refer them to.
Yeah, exactly. I love the new overflow work in the group. It's been amazing to see. And I hope to get a lot more of it as well.
I hope so.
And also, I should say, I listened to Melanie Paget Power's podcast this week, and she had a great guest. Just remembered, I think, the 3 Ps, and it's about how to define the right clients for you, whether you have a passion for the subject, whether it's going to give you the profit you need, or whether it's going to help your portfolio. So they were the 3 Ps. Really interesting way of thinking about how to get projects and how to get the right clients. I thought that was really good. We might put a link to that as well.
I love that. And also ask yourself that powerful question that we mentioned earlier in the beginning of the episode. If I didn't have this client on my roster, would doors open to better things? And I think the answer is invariably yes.
It is.
A lot of the time. Usually.
Yeah, because my final thought is that it's better to spend more time on good clients who respect you and who pay well and on time. And invariably, they'll end up giving you more work, those good clients, and refer you to other good clients. Good clients know each other.
Yes.
And the difficult ones will just find another mug to do their work, or even someone more suited to their style of working or their budget.
Yes. And it becomes easier the more that you start to kick clients to the curb.
In fact, the hardest one is saying no to your first client for whatever reason. And after that, it gets easier because it inevitably is a good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that brings us to the end of the episode. So thank you for listening, everyone. We hope it's given you some motivation to kick a few of those dodgy clients to the curb.
Yeah. Find good clients.
Good clients.
Yeah, and we hope it's inspiring, and we'll see you again next week. I think we've got a guest next week again.
Oh, we do. I forget who that is, but you would know.
I do know, but I'm not going to say just in case something goes wrong and I don't want to jinx it.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it as a mystery.
Yep. See you again next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.